and it is breakout players that we are expecting in 2021. Guys who, maybe we thought they were going to come on a little bit sooner and just haven't quite gotten there to this point, or maybe in some cases a rookie who's going to show up and hit it right away. So I'm going to start with Cynthia Freeland on this one. Cynthia, who are we looking at to be that breakout star in 2021?
Well, I'm looking at the Cardinals' first-round pick from last season, Isaiah Simmons, who last season we only saw him play about 34% of the defensive snaps. I think there's going to be a huge uptick in that percentage this year. Remember, at Clemson, he literally played like all of the defense, every position. And when that translates, especially with a guy like Budda Baker, who's already there, maybe he would have benefited from a more regular offseason. So what I think is going to happen this season is the combination of him plus Budda, plus a little bit more time to learn and a few more kind of game speed reps from last season. And Isaiah Simmons is going to be exactly who they thought that they were going to be drafting.
Yeah, they did dial him back at some point because they wanted to just make sure that he was right mentally. You can't play all over the place until you know what's going on in all these different places. So I do expect his snap count to increase. We'll see if the production goes with it like Cynthia is expecting. All right, Stacey Dales, take it away.
Well, I love that Cynthia started with defense. Of course she would. Everybody wants to talk about the offense, and guess what? I do too. And I'm going to start with Joe Burrow. He's going to be my breakout player, you guys. A quarterback, the first-round pick, the former overall first pick of the Cincinnati Bengals. Remember that ACL, MCL, devastating injury back in Week 11 of last season? Well, he told us kind of an 85% feel, heading into mandatory camp. I think Joe Burrow is going to build on those 269 pass yards per game, and there's a couple reasons he's going to be able to do it. His offensive line has to protect. They gave up 48 sacks a season ago. 32 of those Joe Burrow took. And they've got to get back to running the football with Joe Mixon. I think he's going to be healthy. We saw him in just 6 games last season. This team has struggled to find a consistent run game. What does Zach Taylor, the head coach, do, you guys? He brings in former coach with this staff, offensive line coach Frank Pollock. He's also going to be the run game coordinator. He and Joe Mixon have a fantastic relationship. That's been publicly made very clear. And I think we're going to see Mixon improve upon those 3.5 yards per game on the ground last season. The injury obviously didn't help. And Joe Burrow, he's got to be protected. Riley Reif has joined this offensive line. They drafted Jackson Carman in the 2nd round. And then you're going to see Higgins, you're going to see Chase, and yes, Boyd work in the middle. And boy, we are in for something, Mark, with Jamar Chase reunited with his quarterback from LSU, where I guess you could say, saw fireworks that last season together.
No question, Stacey. Last time they were on the field, Jamar Chase and Burrow, Jamar had 224 yards, 2 touchdowns, 9 catches, and was destroying everybody in the national championship game. So I love the Joe Burrow breakout, and Chase, I think, will break out as well to be the offensive rookie of the year. He was the most talented wide receiver that I scouted since Julio Jones and A.J. Green came out in 2011. A lot of other great wide receivers, but he was right there at the top as far as the best guy I scouted. And I think you always talk about practice reps with quarterbacks and receivers being on the same page. Well, these guys don't even have to practice together because they did it at the highest level. We know Joe Burrow won just about every award when he was coming out of LSU that year. So that synergy that these two have, I think, will put them on the field right away to break out together.
I'm going to stay at the receiver position. I'm going to go with a guy in his 2nd year who I believe had a decent rookie year. I find it funny that people talk about the Colts' Michael Pittman and they act as if he was a disappointment. And I think because there was an opportunity for him to step in, and a lot of folks thought, well, he's going to push 1,000 yards or so, and he wound up with 503 and just 1 touchdown. You're seeing it right there. But I saw a lot of promise. I saw a lot of ability, maybe more than some folks thought from a speed standpoint as far as his game speed versus his time speed. And I know when I talk to personnel guys around the league who thought about him a certain way before the draft and still think about him a certain way, that they're very impressed. They're kind of jealous that the Colts wound up ending up with Michael Pittman and think maybe he should have gone a little bit earlier in the draft. So let's see, because if they're right, this could be the breakout year with a new quarterback now throwing him the football, Stacey Dales. So if Michael Pittman is going to break out, that means who else is going to break out?
I don't know, guys. Mike, if I can call this a breakout year for Carson Wentz, maybe a resurgence, but I'm going to combine the two because Carson Wentz is about to resurge, my friends. He is reuniting, as we've all well chronicled, with his former offensive coordinator, Frank Reich, those first 2 seasons while he was a Philadelphia Eagle. And we all remember that 2017 season. I mean, second in the league in TD to interception ratio, 4th in passer rating, 33 touchdowns he had that year to set an Eagles franchise record. Carson Wentz declined, though. The injury happened that season, and some bad habits started. Well, guess who will get him back into form? Frank Reich. I've spoken to both men, you guys. And I've asked Frank Reich the question, why are you so good outside of being a former great quarterback yourself with QBs? And Carson, why is Frank Reich so good teaching you? One common denominator, I would say, he doesn't try to change the quarterback. He's worked with so many. He really is in tuned and attuned to what they want. And Frank Reich made a comment, you guys, that Carson Wentz is opinionated in a really good way. So it's going to be collaboration all the way for this offense. I think it's going to be explosive. We're going to see Carson Wentz relaunch the football, and Michael Pittman will be, to your point, Mike, one of the recipients. Yards after catch. Watch that with Pittman. He's special there.
Yeah, everything's really good so far with Carson Wentz. He spent a lot of time in Indy in the spring. There's good vibes between him and his teammates. So you hope if you're the Colts, Wentz, and everybody involved, that continues into the games and the games certainly that matter. Mark, Wentz left the NFC East. Take me back. I mean, take me to the NFC East here. We need an NFC East person because that's when these chats really get interesting.
It's all about the NFC East. You know that, Mike G. So let's go with the epitome of the NFC East. That's the Dallas Cowboys. We always want to talk about the Cowboys. Let's stick with the receiver theme. And I like CeeDee Lamb to break out this year. Had a fantastic rookie season, 74 catches, which was a Cowboys franchise record when he was with Dak. Let's talk about the synergy there again. He averaged 86 yards per game in those 4 games Dak played. Dipped down to only 45 yards per game when Dak was out of there. With Dalton and the cast, the crew of quarterbacks that they had. So I look for CeeDee Lamb. We talked about yards after catch, that he does his best work in the slot, creating the yards after catch. Also, CeeDee is going to still be the main punt returner for the Cowboys. And when he was at OU, he made a lot of big plays as a punt returner as well. So I look for CeeDee Lamb to take over as the number 1 option for Dak in that Cowboys offense and to create plays in the slot and as a punt returner.
Okay, so I'm going to thread all this kind of together with the resurgent theme. There was a good kind of Joe Brady note with Joe Burrow to Jamar Chase from 2019 thing, and talk about Sam Darnold, because Sam Darnold could be poised for a uptick. He's coming back, folks. I think he's going to be kind of the guy we thought he was going to be. You think when you talk about video game characters like what Joe Brady had at that LSU offense, I mean, Christian McCaffrey's a pretty good video game kind of situation that you'd want to have. And Sam Darnold, he does know how to throw the deep ball. We did see it before. Last year, okay, didn't work out so well. All right, let's, move it down south, get that blue uniform on instead of the green one, and see what happens here when you have also, some great receivers. They added another guy from LSU, Terrace Marshall Jr., and I think you're going to have a resurgent Sam Darnold.
Sam Darnold fits the mold of what a breakout player could be, because nothing's been right around him for the first couple of years of his career, and they are hopeful that everything will be right around him in Carolina. Everything was right around me for this chat. This was phenomenal. You're all breakout stars in my book. Stacey, Mark, Cynthia, thank you very much.